Welcome back, my friends. Currently, we're on day 331 of Russia's disastrous invasion of Ukraine. And for the last month, we've all been looking forward to this meeting at Ramstein Air Base of NATO members to see what would be announced for Ukraine additional military assistance. Unfortunately, Ramstein ends disappointingly for Kyiv as Ukrainian troops continue to hold out against Russia's assaults. So, what the heck happened? The highly anticipated meeting at the Ramstein Air Base ended on June 20th without reaching a consensus on sending powerful German-made Leopard tanks to Ukraine. Germany's new defense minister, Boris Pistorius, told reporters after the meeting that a decision has not yet been made on whether or not Germany would transfer Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. It's also still very confusing whether Germany is giving permission for other countries to send their Leopard 2 tanks. Germany holds out on Ukraine tanks' supply decision despite mounting calls. All the pressure from all the other countries was entirely on Germany, and they wouldn't budge, they wouldn't move. So Poland, Finland, and the Baltic states gave the green light to deliver their own Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine, and the Polish leadership expressed some frustration that Berlin had yet to follow suit. So here's the quote from the Polish Prime Minister. "Consent is of a secondary importance here. We will either obtain this consent quickly from Germany, or we will do what is needed ourselves." So it looks like a coalition of the willing is forming, and they're just gonna send the tanks anyways. What's Germany's response? Decision on Leopard tanks for Ukraine could come within the next couple days, maybe, as Germany allows Ukrainians preparatory training. So Germany won't stand in the way if other states act like us, especially with regard to the possible preparatory training on these tanks. This is according to Germany's new defense minister. So Ukrainians are allowed to look at them, they're allowed to touch them, we might even let them train on them, but no decision yet whether or not we will send tanks or allow other countries to send tanks. So I think what's happening here is that other countries, Poland, Finland, Denmark, they're just going to send the tanks. And Germany's never really going to give consent. They're just going to kind of dither in the wind. And I think what they want is plausible deniability. They want to be able to tell the Russians, we never greenlit this. Poland went rogue, and Poland just sent the tanks. We didn't support this. We couldn't stop them. I think that's where this debate is going, and this is absurd. And they've stopped talking about Abrams tanks. This was a very foolish counter-argument from the Germans saying that America needed to first send Abrams tanks before they would allow Leopards to go. So here's a map of Europe, of all the European countries that have training and maintenance facilities for the Leopard 2 tanks. So in order to train Ukrainians and help service the vehicles, any of these European countries can help. Here are all the European countries that have training and maintenance facilities for the Abrams tank. Yes, Poland has purchased some Abrams tanks, but they haven't finished completing their training and maintenance facilities. Nobody in Europe can help the Ukrainians maintain these vehicles if America were to send Abrams. The Leopard 2s are the best choice. So Olaf Scholz is entirely to blame. I know I have German subscribers watching these videos. I apologize for the comments section. People are being very harsh for you, and I do recognize the distinction between the German people and the German government. But in the meantime, Olaf Scholz needs to keep getting blasted. So here's a new verb, Scholzing, communicating good intentions only to use, find, invent any reason imaginable to delay these and or prevent them from happening. Here are the most effective anti-tank weapons for Ukraine. We could say the Javelin or the NLAW. And here's the most effective anti-tank weapon for Russia, Olaf Scholz. On Russian social media, Olaf Scholz is being praised as a friend of Russia for blocking these tanks still. Not a good look when the Russians are happy with the decisions you're making. So why? What is the reason that Germany doesn't want to supply Leopard 2 tanks? And the obvious first reason is Russian money. Russian money for the last 20 years has been flowing into Berlin as Germany has been reliant on Russian energy imports. The other reason, and this is conspiratorial here, but in the last 20 years, the Russians have invited every male SPD politician to Russia for conferences, events, ceremonies, and the Russians have paid for all of this. And all of these SPD men got the same rooms and the same hotels, and totally by chance, they met beautiful young Russian women or men who adamantly insisted on having sex with these old SPD men in front of a mirror with the lights on. So it is possible that Russia has compromising information on certain German politicians, whether it be corruption or other unflattering information, videos, pictures. So I imagine that the FSB in Russia is doing everything they can to put pressure on German politicians to block these tanks. We'll know the truth eventually. But in the meantime, a coalition of the willing is just going to start sending the tanks. Czechia and Slovakia have joined the coalition, planning to send Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine, as well as the Netherlands. The Netherlands currently leases Leopard 2 tanks from Germany, but they're willing to buy them outright and then give them to Ukraine. So the countries in Europe that have stepped up, we've got Poland, Finland, Czechia, Slovakia, Sweden, and the Netherlands. I think they're just going to send them, and Germany's not really going to give consent or really put up much of a fight. So here we are. If you want to be a democracy, this is the process. It's confusing, it's frustrating, it's messy, having the leaders of 50 different nations sitting around one table. This is both glorious and absurd, but what's the alternative? What's the alternative to democracy? And it's fascism. If you don't want to be a part of this, then this is what you get. You're Vladimir Putin, Tsar of Russia, and your only real military ally is Belarus, and Belarus de facto now is part of Russia. There are hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers inside of Belarus. Belarus is basically under military occupation. Lukashenko doesn't have the ability to stop supporting Putin or supporting Russia at this point. Belarus doesn't have the right of self-determination anymore. I'm sure Lukashenko did not sign up for this a year ago. Here's a fun picture of Ukrainian Defense Minister Reznikov just walking around the room in Ramstein, meeting with various world leaders. He looks like he made a bunch of new friends. And I don't want to sound like the meeting in Ramstein was a failure, anything but. Lots of fantastic news for Ukraine, lots of countries stepping up despite this hiccup over the tanks. Finland has announced its largest military aid package ever to Ukraine, worth $434 million. Denmark has said they will donate all of their Caesar self-propelled howitzers, 19 in total. They're just going to send everything they have. Fantastic. In addition, the Dutch are saying they are now open to transferring F-16 jets to Ukraine. I just saw on Twitter that the United States isn't going to oppose this. They're going to approve the transfer of these planes to Ukraine should Ukraine want them, and the Netherlands agrees to send them. In addition, the Netherlands announced they're sending another Patriot air defense system in addition to Leopard tanks if they can get the approval to purchase them from Germany. So a lot of fantastic help from the Dutch. And here is what the United States announced in their latest security package worth $2.5 billion. An additional 59 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, 90 Stryker armored vehicles, 8 Avenger surface-to-air missile systems, 350 Humvees. Here's the press release from the DoD just saying what all of this stuff is, and it's just mind-boggling the amount of weapons and equipment that the United States has sent these last 11 months. But I don't want to leave anyone out. Here's the full list of what was announced. Let's mention the UK sending these 14 Challenger tanks as well as 600 Brimstone rockets. Canada is sending another NASAMS air defense battery as well as 200 Senator armored vehicles. This is a lot of armored vehicles. France is also sending 40 AMX-10RC wheeled tanks as well as Bastion armored vehicles. And like I said, lots of great stuff being announced by everyone in Europe doing what they can to help Ukraine. And just because it's not listed, just because it's not announced, doesn't mean it can't show up in Ukraine. As an example, the United States never disclosed sending AGM-88 HARM missiles until the Russians started taking pictures of them saying, hey, we know that the United States sent this to Ukraine. The next story you should know about is that the CIA director, William Burns, personally went to Kyiv in order to brief President Zelensky on Russia's latest moves. We can only speculate what the CIA director told President Zelensky, but at this point, the Kremlin is as airtight as a sponge. Lots of information is getting out to foreign intelligence agencies, so more than likely we do know what the Russians are planning, and Russia is planning for a new wave of mobilization to turn the tide of war. Russia probably wants to grab off the streets between 500,000 and 1 million men to send them to Ukraine. They're just trading bodies for time. I don't think this is going to change the outcome of the war, but Putin is desperate to do something. Something needs to change, because if you've been watching these update videos, the front lines for either side really hasn't moved since Russia lost the city of Kherson. So not a lot of major operations in the Kherson region or the Zaporizhia region or the Luhansk region. The Wagner Group is still pushing and trying to take the city of Bakhmut, but when you actually look at the square kilometers, once again, not a huge change in positions for a war of this size. And a possible explanation of why there isn't a lot of movement from either side: Russia's gamble on energy backfires spectacularly as the world experiences a warm winter and plummeting gas futures. So this was a very warm, very mild winter in Europe, and this has both positives and negatives. Positives being energy prices in the EU are reasonable, the civilian Ukrainian population are not having to deal with as harsh low temperatures. But Ukraine more than likely was planning for a major winter counteroffensive, maybe in the Luhansk region, maybe in the Zaporizhia region, and the ground never fully froze. The fields are still very muddy in Ukraine. So the only way to move armored vehicles are on roads, and all the roads are being shelled continuously. So I think Ukraine did want to push maybe to Melitopol or maybe deeper into Luhansk, but they're just going to have to delay it now. We're already more than halfway through winter. I don't think the deep freeze for the ground to allow such an offensive is going to happen now. So both sides, in a way, feel like time is on their side. The Russians are planning a new wave of mobilization, so maybe by April or May they can have another 500,000 to 1 million men inside Ukraine to help push, whereas with the Ukrainians, they keep getting better and better, more advanced military equipment. So both sides, more than likely at this point, because we're heading into the spring, it's going to be mud season again. Both sides are probably planning now for a huge April or May, spring, early summer offensive. To get an update from the front lines, let's check in with Macer Gifford. He's a British national fighting for Ukraine in the 131st Recon Battalion, and when he has time and internets, he likes to upload these videos. This video is over 2 minutes long, so I'm going to slightly cut it up to get it down in time, but I'll link the full video in the pinned comment down below.
Hey guys, welcome to the front line in Ukraine. I'm not going to show a huge amount of what's behind me. There's a Russian mortar firing not very far away. You can hear it's the mortar's going over our head, hitting another position. Yeah, we're holding the line. Not a huge amount is planned for this operation. By the time you receive this, it'll be over, and the mission as of now is to simply hold ground. That can obviously change because it's changed before and it will change again. They'll make us do stuff like, for example, patrols, clearing areas. And yeah, it's just an artillery war, as you can hear. There's a Russian gun not far away. You can hear the mortar just travelling literally exactly over my head. And I think I know where they're hitting as well. Thankfully, all is good, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, it's an artillery war. What we really need is the ability to target back, which we do to some degree. But if we're going to win this war, we need tanks, we need artillery, we need the ability to locate quickly these mortar teams that are harassing us all the time and hit them back. So come on, America, come on, Britain, where's that victory package? We need it.
The tanks are on the way, Macer. Just continue to hold on. So how is this war really going for Russia? And the Kremlin declines to say if Moscow is preparing for airstrikes. The Kremlin refused to say whether Russia was preparing for strikes on the capital on Friday after images of missile defense systems on several Moscow rooftops circulated on social media. So here's a picture of the Ministry of Defense building for Russia in Moscow, and there's now a Panzer air defense system on the rooftop. So the Russians have gone from, we're going to take Kyiv in 3 days, to, oh, I hope our capital isn't going to get bombed. Now there is a possibility that they're just putting air defense systems on rooftops in order to make the civilian population feel like they're at total war and that they need to be mobilized in order to defend the homeland, defend the capital. Is Ukraine actually going to try and strike this building? I don't know. But here's the joke on the internet that this is what the Kremlin is going to look like soon, with air defense systems being stationed everywhere in Moscow. Here is an interesting clip that I think you should watch. And this Russian pundit, this Russian commentator, I remember this guy from last September. He showed up on Kremlin State TV saying that the special limited military operation wasn't going well, and they either needed to give up on it or else mobilize the population. So this was early September. He was allowed to go on TV and make critical comments of how the war was going in order to justify mobilization 2 weeks before Russia then mobilized about 300,000 men. So here he is again on Russian state TV saying the same thing again. The war is not going well. In order to win, we need to mobilize millions of men. The entire clip is 2 minutes long. I might cut out a little bit, but I'll link it once again in a pinned comment down below.
Во-первых, теперь становится ясно, и даже по самому Путину это видно, насколько катастрофической ошибкой было само решение начальника.
Это вам становится пока ясно.
Это очевидно. Когда все это начиналось, абсолютно очевидно, что предполагалась колониальная война. Что я под этим понимаю? Страна, огромная Россия, живет как жила. Люди ходят в рестораны, в театры, в футбол, ездят за границу. Да. Все классно, все хорошо.
Вы говорили,
отправили экспедиционный корпус, контрактников, там, Росгвардию и так далее.
Так, быстро
Украинская армия разбежалась, Зеленский в ужасе уехал на Запад, мы вошли в Киев, посадили Медведчука, там, Януковича, кого угодно. Вот так все планировалось, да? Я не знаю, кто наговорил Путину, что украинцы не будут сопротивляться.
Вы этот план видели?
Ну, слушайте, кончайте уже, успокойтесь, все понятно. Дальше. Вот серьезных боевых действий мы видим следующее. Продвижение на фронте, ну, какое-то, конечно, есть, там, Запорожье и так далее, но цена этого продвижения такая. Полностью уничтожены украинские города. То есть Мариуполь — это просто вообще ужас. Мы видим миллионы беженцев из Украины и с этих территорий и так далее. Мы видим миллион беженцев сюда, в Россию. Да? Мы видим крупнейшую гуманитарную катастрофу. Дальше. Выяснилось, что контрактной армии, Росгвардии не получается. И теперь дальше. Вопрос. Чем все закончится? Ответ абсолютно неочевидный. Я вам так скажу. Я скажу, какая будет цена этого. Цена этого следующая. Чтобы реально взять Киев, чтобы реально победить украинскую армию миллионов, которые помогают, заваливают оружием Запад, вы должны, товарищи, сделать следующее. Это я обращаюсь к патриотам. Ну давайте сделаем. Первое. Объявить реальную мобилизацию в стране. Реально поставить под ружье несколько миллионов мужиков российских. Да? Дальше. Вы должны, дорогие товарищи, реально закрыть выезд из страны, реально перевести всю экономику на военное положение. Вы при этом добьетесь того, что в руины превратится, как Мариуполь, огромные города, миллионные в Украине, включая Киев и Харьков. Вы получите при этом сотни тысяч погибших людей, да? Вы этого хотите?
So he says it. He says that in order for Russia to actually win this war, they need to close the borders, declare martial law, conscript millions of Russian men, and then be willing to accept hundreds of thousands of casualties. Now, Putin absolutely is willing to do this, and that's why this man is allowed to go on TV and say such things, because they're trying to soften up the Russian population for a large-scale mobilization potentially coming soon. Here's some interesting information from General Gerasimov issuing orders to the entire Russian army that phones and tablets are now officially banned. They don't want Russian soldiers filming videos asking for help and then having them go viral online anymore. And Russian soldiers are complaining that this will prohibit the use of drones, as most commercial drones require you to link it to a smartphone. Non-army vehicles are also banned. Civilian vehicles have been used because there's a shortage of military vehicles. And here's the controversial one. Beards are banned. Everyone must be clean-shaven. Now, why would the Russians do this? And Gerasimov's order for all Russian soldiers to be clean-shaven may be in preparation for the potential use of chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine, which would necessitate an airtight seal on your face for a gas mask. It's a little concerning. And here is the reaction. Chechen leader calls rumored ban on beards in the Russian army a provocation. So if Russia does start using chemical weapons on the battlefield, at least the Chechens won't be able to put a gas mask on their face. Final couple feel-good clips I have for you. The first one is the Science Museum in Lviv, where there's a display where children can sink the Moskva cruiser. That's hilarious. Final clip I have for you is of a Ukrainian defender who says, if you're having a bad day, then watch this video.
Якщо в тебе сьогодні був не самий кращий день, і ти вирішила сумувати, просто додивись це відео до кінця.
Super cute! Okay, that's all for this update video. Glory to the heroes, glory to Ukraine. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments or questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, take care, be safe.